across here and make a few points. Luke, same, 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 same. Mark, 0. Miracles. Passion. No post-resurrection stories. Parables. No historical. Now, when I say no post-resurrection theme, I am getting ahead of myself, but let me tell you why. We are going to go into the significance of the Codex Sinaiticus. And the Codex Sinaiticus is the early New Testament that was discovered in St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai. And there are other codexes which have the similar structure, including the Codex Vaticanus and the Syria Atticus as well. And these agree that Mark ends at 16:8. And the last 12 verses were added, and they have a very good idea when they were added and who added them, and I can get into that later. It's on that basis that I say there's no, I say, many people obviously say when I say I, it's only editorial. All right? Now look here, what does that mean? You see, if Matthew was first, then you can say Mark is merely an abridgment, a shorthand copy. Then you don't have to worry about the fact that these are missing, 1, 2, 3. But if you say Mark is first, now you have a new question, don't you? You say, good heavens, why doesn't Mark have the sayings of Jesus? He does have the miracles, he has the passion. Why doesn't he have the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus? And he doesn't contribute much to this whole historical question. Therefore, a whole new question comes up. See, the force of the research, the force of careful reading makes this an issue, if it's first. If it's not first, then we can just simply say when Mark copied and abbreviated Matthew, he just left those things out and it doesn't make any difference. Then we can just discover his reasons for it, and there is no issue. But to the degree that it can be asserted that Mark is first, then we have to deal with this issue. Now, therefore, a new thesis came in, if Mark is first. If Mark is first, then there must be something very interesting going on. And that is that the sayings of Jesus, and I'm going to call that for shorthand, Q. All right? The sayings of Jesus, or Q, is missing from Mark. Therefore, Matthew and Luke must both have found a way to gain that kind of material, but Mark did not. Equally well, it looks like they both copied Mark. Well, Matthew has 90%, as you know, of Mark, and Luke has about 55% of Mark. And that means they follow the word order, the grammar is similar, though Luke is more sophisticated. And wherever Matthew and Luke proceed in their writing, they always follow the order established in the writing of Mark, and therefore Luke really depends upon Mark as Matthew depends upon Mark. And you can also make the following point, and that is that Luke borrowed material from Luke, and therefore it really is an interesting question that to create this gospel of Matthew and Luke, they used Q as well as our good friend Mark. That's called the two-document thesis. It's called the two-document thesis. Now, a very interesting scholar did some very interesting work. He looked at Q and he said, you know what, if you examine the sayings of Jesus, the way in which Luke uses Q shows a very close appreciation for the way the ideas in Q's are developed. Then Luke depends upon Q as well as Mark. Oh, then he's doing something with Q. He's allowing it to order in with the way in which he's composing the gospel. You see, now we can date it. And now, let me put in, by the way, there is no general agreement as to the dates. It's minus and plus, depending upon who you read, 2 to 5 years. 70, 80, or 82, and 84, or something like that. And these dates are constantly being revised for a good reason. Everything I say tonight is based upon arguments. All of these are arguments.
Could you make a point about how it was shown that Luke depended upon Q again? I didn't follow the reasoning by...
Well, Luke depends upon Q. Now, we have to talk about Q to make that point. But Q is in 3 levels. And you have to see that if it's in 3 levels, it develops historically from the first, second, to the third. And I can make that point a little later when we get into Q. But that, in other words, it's an argument based upon the way in which Q is organized. All right. Now, scholars began saying to themselves, look here. We're trying to find the central message of Jesus. And Q has the possible date. Now, they did a lot of arguing for this, and they came up with this very interesting possible date of 50. Now, over here, I'm going to write the problem of Paul. Okay, I'm just going to call it a problem. Pardon me? Yes, 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 for many people. Right. Well, while they were about to get into Q, scholars then, in a way, were shifted because of a major argument by 2 scholars, and actually 3 come together. But let me talk about what's happening. Some people said, look here, Q is not the problem. The Gospels are not the problem. The real problem is you have to anchor your faith in Paul. That's the problem. And if you anchor your faith in Paul, then there's a kinship. The closest kinship is between Paul and John. There's a kinship in terms of to what degree the Gospel authors are picking up what Paul is saying. But notice the dates. Paul dies at approximately 57 AD. Mark, you can say, literally ignores what is being said by Paul nearly in its entirety, as Paul ignores the earthly ministry of Jesus, as he says himself. Now, this sometimes is called the problem of the 14 points. Now, I'd like to get into that, but first I'd like to go to another point, and that is, when you look at Mark, and you look at the study of Mark, you notice something extremely interesting. You can take Mark in increments, each one of the episodes, and you can see that there is an incremental development in the entire work. You can take Mark and nearly literally cut it in half. There are only 667 verses, and if you cut it right in half, if you exclude the 12 verses, you subtract that from 667, right, that gives you 52, right. Every story increases the level of the story in respect to the enormity of the miracles, of the impact it has on people around him, and therefore his fame grows and grows as the miracles increase in importance. His fame grows. Then there's a central issue here, and from that central issue there proceeds a greater and greater degree of danger until it